Jonas woke up in his clothes. He squinted at the clock, 6 a.m. He was lying on the couch in his den, a ream of computer printouts scattered all around him. He got up, went into the hallway, walked down to the master bedroom. Maggie wasn't there. Their bed hadn't been touched. Terry spotted him crossing the tarmac from the parking lot. "Good morning, Professor." Jonas eyed the plane warily. "You didn't tell me it was so small." "It's not, for a Beechcraft." She was finishing her pre-flight checklist. The plane was a twin-turbo with a whale logo and TOI painted on the fuselage. Jonas set down his bag, looked around. "Where's the pilot?" She put her hands on her hips and smiled. "You?" he said. "Hey, let's not start that shit again. Are you going to have a problem with this?" "No, I just—" Terry went back to her inspection. "If it makes you feel any better, I've been flying for 6 years. Jonas nodded uneasily. "Are you all right?" she asked as Jonas climbed into the plane and fumbled with his seatbelt. "If you'd rather sit in back, there's plenty of room to stretch out. Barf bags are in the side pocket." She smiled. "You're enjoying this." "I didn't think that an experienced deep-sea pilot like you would be so squeamish." "I guess I'm used to being in control. Just fly the damn plane. Up front will be fine." The cockpit was a little tight. The co-pilot seat felt jammed up against the windshield. "That's as far back as it goes," Terry told him as he searched for a lever to adjust the seat. He swallowed dryly. "I need a glass of water." She noticed his trembling hands. "The green cabinet in back." Jonas got up and struggled back to the cabin. Jonas unzipped his duffel bag and took out a medicine bottle filled with small yellow pills. Claustrophobia. His doctor diagnosed the problem after the accident, a psychosomatic reaction to the stress he had endured. A deep-sea pilot with claustrophobia was as useless as a high diver with vertigo. Jonas chased down 2 of the pills with water from a paper cup. He stared at his trembling hand, crumpling the cup into his fist. He closed his eyes a moment, then took a long, deep breath. "You okay?" Terry asked through the door of the cockpit. Jonas looked up at her. "I told you, I'm fine." The flight to Monterey lasted 2.5 hours. Jonas settled in and began to enjoy it. Above the coast of Big Sur, Terry spotted a pair of whales migrating south along the shore. "Blues," she said. "Cruising to Baja," he added, staring down at the endangered species. "Jonas, listen. Maybe you could convince my father to allow me to follow DJ down in the second Abyss glider." "Pass." He gazed out his window. "Why not?" Jonas looked at the girl. "First, I've never seen you pilot a sub. There's a lot of pressure down there." That did it. Pressure. You want pressure. Terry pulled back on the wheel and rolled the Beechcraft into a series of tight 360s, then sent the small plane into a nauseating nosedive. The plane righted itself at 1,500 feet as Jonas puked across the dashboard. David Adishek adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, then knocked on the double doors of Suite 810. No reply. He knocked again, this time louder. The door opened, revealing a groggy Maggie Taylor standing behind it, wearing nothing but a white robe. "David, Christ, what time is it?" "Almost noon. Rough night?" She smiled, still half asleep. "Not as rough as my husband's, I'm sure. Sit." She pointed to a pair of white sofas that faced a big screen TV in the living area. "Nice suite. Where's Bud?" Maggie curled up on the far sofa opposite Adishek. "He left about 2 hours ago. You did a nice job of harassing Jonas at the lecture." "Is all this necessary, Maggie? He seems like a decent enough guy. So you marry him. After almost 10 years, I've had enough." "Why not just divorce him and get it over with?" "It's not that simple. Now that I'm in the media's eye, my agent says we have to be very careful about public perception. Jonas still has a lot of friends in this town. He has to come off as a lunatic. People have to believe that his actions brought this divorce on. Last night was a good start." "So what's next? Where's Jonas now?" Adishek pulled out his notes. "He went home with the Tanaka woman. Jonas with another woman. Maggie laughed hysterically. It was innocent. Just a ride home from the awards. I followed him to the commuter airport earlier this morning. They're headed to Monterey. My guess is to that new whale lagoon that Tanaka Oceanographic Institute is constructing. Okay, stay with him and keep me informed. By the end of next week, I want you to go public with the Navy story, emphasizing the fact that 2 of the crew were killed. Once the story hits, you'll do a follow-up interview with me, then I'll push for the divorce, public humiliation, and all. You're the boss. Listen, if I'm going to be following Jonas, I'll need some more cash. Maggie pulled a thick envelope out of her robe pocket. Bud says to save the receipts. Yeah, thought Adashek. I'm sure he needs the write-off. There it is. Terry pointed to the shoreline as they descended towards sparkling Monterey Bay. Jonas sipped warm soda, his stomach still jumpy from Terry's little air show. His head pounded, and he had already made up his mind to leave immediately after meeting with Masao. As far as he was concerned, Terry Tanaka was the last person Jonas would ever recommend to descend to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. Jonas looked down and to his right at the empty man-made lagoon situated on a 10-mile square parcel of beachfront real estate just south of Moss Landing. From the air it looked like a giant oval-shaped swimming pool. Lying parallel to the ocean, the structure was just over 3/4 of a mile in length and a 1/4 mile wide. It was 80 feet deep at its center, with walls 2 stories high and enormous acrylic windows at each end. A concrete canal at the midpoint of the lagoon's oceanside wall connected it with the deep waters of the Pacific. The lagoon held no water yet. Construction workers crawled like ants over the walls and scaffolding. If the schedule held, in less than a month the massive doors of the canal entrance would be opened and the lagoon would fill with seawater. It would be the largest man-made aquarium in the world. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it, Jonas said as they prepared to land. Terry smiled proudly. Masao Tanaka had made the building of the aquarium his life's work. Designed as a living laboratory, the lagoon served as a natural yet protective environment for its future inhabitants, the largest creatures ever known to exist on Earth. Each winter, tens of thousands of the mammals migrated through California's coastal waters to breed. When the aquarium was complete, its doors would open to welcome them, the giant cetaceans, the greys, the humpbacks, and perhaps even the endangered blues. Masao's dream was becoming a reality. 45 minutes later, Jonas found himself smiling into the eyes of the lagoon's founder. "Jonas! It's so good to see you. My God, you look like hell." Masao Tanaka, a good foot shorter than Taylor, was positively beaming at the man. "Rough trip. Your whale lagoon looks amazing. I'll give you a tour later. Come, I want you to meet my chief engineer, Alfonso DeMarco. He is reviewing the video DJ took in the trench. Jonas, I really need your input." Jonas followed Masao to the projection room. The video showed a spotlight cutting a beam through the dark water. The wreckage of the Jonas loomed into view. It was lying on its side at the bottom of a canyon wall, wedged in between boulders and mud. DeMarco stared at the screen as the spotlight roamed over the scarred metal surface of the broken submersible. "The simplest explanation is it got caught in a landslide." "A landslide? I'm sure you know they're a frequent occurrence down there. Just look at all those rocks. The shell may have developed a crack on impact. The currents are incredibly strong." "Is there any evidence?" "The Jonas recorded an increase in turbulence almost 2 minutes before we lost contact." Jonas paused, then looked back at DeMarco. "What about the others?" 2 of the other missing Jonas systems recorded similar changes in turbulence. If a landslide got this one, we can probably assume the same thing happened to the others. Jonas turned toward the monitor. "You've lost 4 units, he said. "Isn't it pushing the limits of probability to say they've all been destroyed in landslides?" DeMarco removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He'd had this argument with Masao more than once. We knew the trenches were seismically active. Cables that cross other canyons are broken by landslides all the time. All this means is the Mariana Trench is even more unstable than we'd expected. Changes in deep-sea currents often precede landslide activity, chimed in Terry. Jonas, said Masao, this entire project depends on our ability to determine what happened to these robots and correct the situation immediately. I have decided that we must retrieve this Jonas. My son cannot do the job alone. The job requires 2 subs working together, one to clear the debris and steady the Jonas, while the second sub attaches the cable. Dad! Terry suddenly realized why her father had insisted on locating Jonas. Stop the tape. Jonas had seen something on the monitor. Go back a little, he said to the editor. There, Jonas said. The editor froze the frame. Jonas pointed to a tiny white fragment wedged under the submersible. Can you blow that up? The man punched some buttons and magnified the object until it filled the screen. The triangular object was larger, but fuzzy and unclear. Jonas stared at the screen. It's a tooth, he stated. Jonas held a photograph of the blown-up video frame in his hand as he and Terry followed Masao down the corridor which led to the giant aquarium lagoon. If it is a tooth, how do we know it wasn't just uncovered in the landslide? Terry asked. We don't, but it looks white, Terry. Every fossilized megalodon tooth we found has been gray or black, denoting its age. A white tooth would indicate that its owner had only recently perished, or perhaps could still be alive. I need to recover that tooth. She looked up at him, almond eyes blazing. No way! If anyone accompanies my brother into the trench, it will be me. Why is this so important to you anyway, Jonas? Before he could answer, Masao called out, Hey, I'm not babysitting here. You want to see my lagoon? You keep up. Terry glared at him. This discussion isn't over, Jonas. They reached a doorway in the towering wall of the aquarium and entered the giant lagoon. Jonas stopped, awestruck by its enormity. Masao Tanaka stood in front of them proudly, a tight smile etched across his face. We do nice work, eh, my friend? Jonas could only nod in agreement. Masao turned his back to Jonas and Terry. This lagoon has been my dream since I was 6 years old. $40 million, almost 7 years of planning, 4 years of construction. I did all I could, gave it everything I had. He turned and faced them again, tears in his eyes. It's too bad she is never going to open. The Tanakas had invited Jonas to spend the night. Masao emerged from the house. Terry says dinner will be ready soon. I hope you're hungry. My daughter is a very good cook. He smiled. Jonas looked at his friend. I'm sure she is. Now tell me about the lagoon, Masao. What made you build it in the first place, and why did you say it may never be completed? Masao shut his eyes and breathed deeply. Jonas, you smell that sweet ocean air. It makes you appreciate nature, eh? Yes. You know, my father was a fisherman. Back in Japan, he would take me out almost every morning. I guess he had to. My mother died when I was only 4, so there was no one else to take care of me. When I was 6, we moved to America to live with relatives in San Francisco. 4 months later, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. All Orientals are locked in detention camps. Jonas, my father was a very proud man. He could never accept the fact that he was in a prison, unable to fish, unable to live his life. One morning my father just decided to die. Left me all alone, locked up in a foreign land, unable to speak or understand a word of English. You were all alone? Masao smiled. Yes, Jonas, until I saw my first whale. From the prison gates I could see them leap, the humpbacks. They sang to me, kept me company.